The NBA's trade deadline is less than a week away, and today's show is entirely about Pelicans trades that listeners submitted. I'll tell you the deal and give it a grade in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans at NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with y'all on this Friday, game day for the Pelicans as they take on the San Antonio Spurs tonight. But look, we are talking trades here. Not just any trades that y'all sent me. So I'm going to break down listener trades here in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans, give them a grade as we get set for the NBA's trade deadline, which is less than a week away. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, coming to you like nobody else does, breaking down everything you want to know about this team, whether it's fake trades, whether it's the X's and O's, the wins, the losses. We'll be back on Monday talking about the games over the weekend. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. And of course, thank you for being an everydayer if you are. Shout out to you. Let me know in the comments down below. Become an everydayer. Listen Monday through Friday to Locked On Pelicans. So let's get into it. I don't actually know how this show's going to go. I have zero outline for this. I got a ton of trades. We're not going to get to all of them here. And I've grouped them into roughly 3 categories. There's the Jonas Valanciunas trades. That makes sense why people are moving him, given that that's what the Pelicans want to do. Then there's trades for good young players that I'm not so sure if it's actually going to happen because I think you're all trying to fleece some teams. And then there's the ish trades. Now, I think the first 2 categories, there's some WTF trades in there too, but some of these just get kind of weird and fun. We're going to break them all down and then you give a letter grade to all of these. So let's just jump right into it here. I've got like literally a million tabs open. So let's start with the Jonas Valanciunas trades. This first one comes from Logan Bertucci. It's a deal between the Pelicans and the Washington Wizards. The Wizards get Valanciunas, Cody Zeller, Najee Marshall. The Pelicans get Tyus Jones and Daniel Gafford. All right. On the surface of this, I get where you're going with this and why you would make a trade like this, right? Daniel Gafford is a name that people have put together with the Pelicans a lot. They want to ship out Jonas Valanciunas. Gafford has a couple years left, could do some of it. Tyus Jones is a guy that I like. I think the Pelicans have a need for a backup point guard. He could come in and kind of run that unit. This makes sense. The problem is the salaries with this one. One, I do think you're downgrading significantly from Jonas Valanciunas to Daniel Gafford. You are. You're downgrading significantly. You make up for that in terms of the players with Tyus Jones coming into New Orleans. From that perspective, this is like a solid B trade for the team, but that grade's about to get downgraded here. By doing this, the Pelicans are adding $7 more million to their salary cap this season. This trade puts them in the luxury tax at this point now, significantly into the luxury tax by about $4 million or so. So $4 million is going to lead to something like $16 million getting paid out by the Pelicans since they're in the luxury tax. The other issue with this trade is you're sending out 3 players, bringing 2 back. They already have 2 open roster spots. Now you would have 3 open roster spots. So you need to sign 2 players then on top of that luxury tax money you're already paying. So those guys are going to cost you more. So you're putting the Pelicans kind of like minimum, like $7-8 million in the luxury tax on this deal. They're not going to do that for Daniel Gafford, Tyus Jones. I'm going to be mean to a lot of y'all here. I think some of these trades like just don't work. So like, I get where you're going for with the players on this one, but you got to factor in the salary stuff too. It's going to lower it, right? If you make the Pelicans pay, $20 million in luxury tax stuff, it's probably going to be an F on a trade here. I've seen a couple other ones like this, right? So that's kind of one. There was one with Valanciunas, Dyson Daniels, and Alvarado for Tyus Jones, Daniel Gafford. It's going to end up being kind of a similar situation where you put the Pelicans back into the luxury tax with it. Let's go to one that I do think makes some sense here, and I actually like. And that's a trade with the Orlando Magic. This one comes from the Sauce Store LLC here at Dylan_Timothy. The Orlando Magic get Jonas Valanciunas and Dyson Daniels. The Pelicans get Wendell Carter Jr. and Cole Anthony. I don't hate this, actually. I'll be honest. Again, Wendell Carter Jr. is worse than Jonas Valanciunas, but he's a serviceable enough center that can give you some rebounding, a little bit of rim protection, shoot the three on occasion. You're not going to rely on him like you do Jonas Valanciunas, but Cole Anthony has kind of been a bit of a revelation this season. He is under contract for 3 more years at around $12.5 million per. So it's a guy that you kind of cost control, and it gives the Pelicans mid-tier salary here. You actually shave money off of the Pelicans' luxury tax bill by doing this. So when you look at all of this, this is a solid B+, A- trade, in my opinion. This is one that I actually think makes sense. They get Dyson Daniels to give them another defensive guard in the backcourt. They've got a lot of depth at a number of different places. I don't know if they would actually trade Cole Anthony. I don't think he's off the block. He's been a very good 6-man for them. He would kind of play a similar role like that for New Orleans. You could also play him with some of the starters. I actually really like this deal a lot if you were going to have to ship out Jonas Valanciunas, something that I am hesitant to do in general. So not coming up next trade here. This one comes from Homer Simpson at Targaryen on Twitter here, Chunky Targaryen here. The deal, it's a 3-team deal, and these are always tough. Cavaliers get Jonas Valanciunas, a 2025 first-round pick from Milwaukee, a 2030 second-round pick from the Pelicans. The Atlanta Hawks get CJ McCollum, a 2025 first-round pick from the Pels, a 2027 first-round pick from the Milwaukee through the Pels, and a 29 first-round pick from the Pelicans. Pelicans get Trae Young and Jarrett Allen. On the surface of this, shipping out CJ McCollum, bringing in Trae Young, who just got snubbed from the All-Star roster. He's having maybe his best year as a pro, and getting Jarrett Allen in makes sense from a player perspective, and you're giving up just CJ McCollum and Jonas Valanciunas and basically all the picks that they have. I don't hate that. I don't hate that. I'm not the biggest Trae Young guy, but he is very, very good. There's questions about how your roster, your starting lineup, right, would be Trae Young, Herb Jones, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, and Jarrett Allen. It's a terrifying starting 5. I don't know if that all fits. I don't know if Trae Young, Brandon Ingram, and Zion Williamson fit. There's one ball here, but Trae, not being a great 3-point shooter, actually, if you look at his percentage, but definitely his court gravity from there. Allen being a low usage, kind of pick and roll big man, right? Finisher, I think makes sense. I don't mind giving up picks for all of those guys. 4 first-round picks, I think might be a little too little for a deal like this. But in terms of the players and stuff, this is A-, B+. I think, there's big time questions about the fit there that would keep this from being something else. The problem is, in terms of the actual reality of this, I think is going to be more like a C-, is the Hawks aren't going to trade Trae Young, right? Even for 3 first-round picks and CJ McCollum, they're not going to do that. They're looking to move Murray for a reason. They want to build around Trae Young, who's kind of really established himself there. I don't think they're looking to really do any sort of deal for first-round picks, so I'm going to have to lower it there. Final one here in terms of Jonas Valanciunas trades that we're going to look at. This one comes from Garrett Hoop. It's the Trailblazers, Cavaliers, and Pelicans. Trailblazers get Jonas Valanciunas, George Niang, Dyson Daniels, 2 first-round picks from the Pelicans, 2024, 2026. Cavs get Jeremy Grant and a first-round pick from the Pelicans via the Los Angeles Lakers. Pelicans get Jarrett Allen. So basically, Pelicans get Jarrett Allen, send out 1, 2, 3 first-round picks, Jonas Valanciunas, and Dyson Daniels. Yeah, that makes sense. That's what that would minimum cost for Jarrett Allen, who I think also should be on the All-Star team in the East. I don't hate that. That sounds about right. You're not giving up too much. Your center and JV and a young player in Dyson Daniels going to the Trailblazers they liked. Jeremy Grant, I think, makes some sense for the Cleveland Cavaliers there now coming off the bench here. I like this trade all around, B+ all around in terms of maybe realism too, because you're actually getting a very solid player going to the Cleveland Cavaliers where they're kind of flush with Evan Mobley coming back if they want center minutes for him. All right, that's the Jonas Valanciunas trades. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Coming up next, y'all are ambitious here. Good young player trades. Let's see, because there's something we got to talk about with that. And that's what we're going to do coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Right now, though, I'm excited to tell you about FanDuel because happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And if you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday, sitting on the couch, eating snacks, hanging out, placing some bets, and FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points are going to be scored, and so many more. Look, I don't care about the teams particularly in there. The Super Bowl has like very little interest to me, but when you got money on the line, you're going to be very interested in there, so you may as well make the game more interesting. And if you're a new customer, join today. You're going to get $200 in bonus bets for your first bet of $5 or more when it wins. So again, bet $5, it wins, $200 in bonus bets when you visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL and the official sportsbook of Locked On. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, breaking down everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. And we are looking at fake trades today, and it's a lot of fun. If you want to just catch up on the sports world, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. So let's keep grading your fake trades and all of your deals here because this was kind of fun to go through. And look, some of y'all are crazy. There's a couple trades that y'all sent me that like I can't use in here, partially because one was a 6-team deal. Like that's just not going to happen. And it would also probably take like an hour to read all of it. I almost used the meme of like, I ain't reading all that. I'm sorry that I'm happy for you or sorry it happened. I almost sent that one back because that one was just a little crazy. So here's the next category that I want to look at of basically y'all trying to steal young, good players for nothing. And I don't think there's much logic that holds up. So while for some of those deals in the first segment, I said I was going to be mean with F's, C minuses, things like that, you're going to get a lot of those on on the realistic side of things here. I don't think most of these really have that much of a chance when you look at some of these and just kind of the way that the teams are operating. I like the idea, like where your head's at. You're trying to improve the team. That's a great thing. I just don't think it's always going to work when you look at some of the trades here and how all of the pieces fit. Let's start with the Pistons. This one comes from Frank Skindura. The Pistons get Jonas Valanciunas, Dyson Daniels, Najee Marshall, a first-round pick from the Pelicans in 2024 and a 2027 first-round pick for the Pelicans. The Pelicans receive Cade Cunningham and Jalen Duren. So this one, if you're the Pelicans, this is an amazing deal. This is an amazing deal. But this is about as unrealistic as it's going to get. Look, honestly, any trade for Jalen Duren is probably going to be unrealistic here. Though I've got another one that I'll say that I don't think is the worst thing in the world here. So one, this puts the Pelicans deep in the luxury tax. I think for a guy like Jalen Duren, you would do that. Cade Cunningham has been, hit or miss at times, but I think he can be really good, and he's a former #1 overall pick. The problem is the Pistons just aren't going to do this, right? I've seen a lot of people saying the Pistons are trying to rebuild, so trade away these young guys and go for the rebuild. Like the Pistons are actively terrible this year. Jalen Duren's in his second year and looks to be like a center for the future that almost is like a franchise cornerstone player. He has been that good, right? This is a guy who per 36 minutes in just his second year of the league is averaging over 16 points and over 14 rebounds. That's a really good player. You're not going to get him for anything less than like 2 or 3 first-round picks. You can say they're tanking, they're trying to rebuild. Yeah, you tank and try and rebuild for a guy like Jalen Duren, right? That's kind of the problem here. 3 first-round picks that aren't particularly good isn't actually going to get them to move, right? You hope one of those picks turns into a player like Jalen Duren. So if you have Jalen Duren, you don't move him, right? Cade Cunningham for the Pelicans here would come off the bench, and I like that idea a lot for him. But he's a former #1 overall pick and was easily the #1 overall pick in that draft. I just don't think that they would do this sort of deal whatsoever. I saw someone basically like yelling at me on Twitter the other day, and it's fine. Being like, you could go get him. You have enough picks. No, you don't. Those picks pale in comparison to the player that's good, and that's kind of the problem, given that those picks likely are going to be in the 20s. you're not going to get a player as good as Jalen Duren here. So sorry, Frank, this one's kind of an F just on like realism here. Here's one that's interesting, but it falls apart. Pelicans get Jalen Duren. Pistons get Dejounte Murray from the Hawks and Najee Marshall. The Hawks get Jaden Ivey, a 2025 first-round pick from Milwaukee, and a 2027 first-round pick from Milwaukee from the Pelicans here. So at least you're getting the Pistons a guy like Dejounte Murray, right? They want a couple of veterans, it sounds like, who can help them kind of like turn this around and just not be nearly as bad as they are. I don't think they want to give up Jalen Duren for that, but for the right player, you could. I don't think that's Murray. I think you could get him for a first-round pick and matching salary, or 2 first-round picks and matching salary, and the Pistons would much rather do that. So it falls apart there. So you're kind of at like, I don't know, C minus, D plus kind of thing, because at least you're in kind of the right mindset of you got to give him someone good or useful here. For the Hawks, though, I think this also falls apart, right? Like Jaden Ivey has potential, but hasn't been particularly good yet. You know, he's top 5 pick, 6 pick, I forget what it was, you know, from a year ago. So there's still a lot of potential for him to grow. We shouldn't write him off. But that's not what the Hawks are looking for. They want to compete around Trae Young right now. 2 Milwaukee first-round picks, like those picks aren't going to be as great, right? The Pelicans should have looked to move those earlier on. And so because of that, like I just don't think this is a very good deal for the Hawks here. I don't hate it for the Pistons, not amazing for the Pistons. I don't hate it for them. It's great for the Pelicans here. This one, by the way, comes from KMF Tulane. So again, you know, you're trying to swindle teams, I think, for a guy like Jalen Duren or good young players, and it just doesn't really work like that. Like I don't see Duren getting moved. You know, we'll look at a couple other deals that have guys in here that make sense. Let's skip to 2 that I want to look at, right? Like let's look at Lauri Markkanen trades here. And here's 2 that are very similar. And the first one comes from Joel. It's Fergberg84. Lauri Markkanen to the Pelicans. They send out Larry Nance Jr., Trey Murphy III, a 2024 first-round pick from the Pels, and a 2027 first-round pick from the Bucks. Look, you're sending at least a good young player in this deal and 2 first-round picks, right? Trey's probably worth 2 first-round picks by himself right now if you were to deal him. So that's 4 first-round picks for Lauri Markkanen. That's great. I think Markkanen is played so well that you would probably still not be including enough. You also then have like weird like questions of fit. Like what's your starting lineup? Does Markkanen come off the bench? You know, who's coming off the bench in this case because you haven't traded away Jonas Valanciunas? That's where fit gets kind of weird. You know, I like the idea of Markkanen on this team. I think it would work. I don't really see any world where that happens, but I commend you for at least putting those picks in. You probably need 2 more first-round picks. It's going to be Trey, 4 first-round picks, and Larry for something like this. I think you're on the right track. It's like a C+, I think, just for like realism and things like that. Fit's just a little bit wonky with Markkanen, but he's good and I think would pair well with Zion Williamson. You have a similar one here that coming from Jordan Hurst, Markkanen for Valanciunas, Najee Marshall, and a 2025 first-round pick. Like this one's an F in comparison to the other one, so I'm not trying to be mean. It's just kind of, you know, if we're comparing things here. You know, that makes your fit even weirder because who's your starting center? Markkanen is not a center. He's more of a wing than even like a big man. Does Zion play the 5? Do you start Larry Nance Jr.? That's where things get weird here. And then the realistic part of you're just going to need to include more with everything. So switch gears from those players. I got 2 more here before we get into the what the trades. I don't hate this one. And this one comes from Trey Harford, Zion_Legacy1. Nick Claxton to the Pelicans, Larry Nance Jr., Dyson Daniels to the Brooklyn Nets. Okay. Like, I don't hate that. I don't have a problem with that. You know, I'd like to keep Larry, you know, but I get that if you got to move something that works, you know, you might want to try and do it for Jonas Valanciunas in there, but you're at least including a good young player or potential young player in Dyson Daniels. For Nick Claxton, you might need to include some sort of lottery protected first round pick, but there are rumors now out there that the Nets are open to moving Nick Claxton. You know, the problem with that is he is on an expiring deal. He's in line to get like a decent contract. So your team gets very expensive all of a sudden. They already are expensive, but if you've got to pay the center position, you know, Nick Claxton could be the guy to do it, and it would just put the Pelicans kind of deepish into the luxury tax. But like this one's a solid B+, A-. I think this trade makes realistic sense and makes the Pelicans better. So I wouldn't hate this move at all. Here's one that's kind of funny to me. This one comes from Colin Robert, C_Robbie 12-10. So at least he says this. Never going to happen. I agree that there's no way this happens. The Pelicans get Mikal Bridges, who we just talked about on the show, Jarrett Allen. Okay. The Cleveland Cavaliers get Jonas Valanciunas, Najee Marshall, a 2024, it's a swap, so that doesn't even count. A first-round pick from the Lakers from the Pelicans this coming draft, top 3 protected. And then the Nets get, and I like this part, Herb Jones, Dyson Daniels, Jordan Hawkins, a 2024 first-round pick from the Pels, and a 2025 first-round pick from Milwaukee. You're going to need to include far more picks to the Cleveland Cavaliers in this one to get a deal done like this. You also probably need to move one of those young players, Herb, Dyson, or Jordan, to the Cavaliers in it. Say you put Herb Jones there, and the Brooklyn Nets get Jordan Hawkins and Dyson Daniels. They're going to ask for Najee Marshall. I think if you include like an additional first-round pick to the Nets in this one and an additional first-round pick to the Cavs, you could kind of get closer. I really don't think, it sounds like Bridges is going to be untradeable this year. I love him. There's it's a little bit redundant with him and Brandon Ingram on this team at the same time, but Bridges could come off the bench. I guess you could start, you would be starting him in place of Herb Jones, actually. So your starting lineup would be CJ, Bridges, Ingram, Zion, Jarrett Allen. Like, I don't know. I dig that. I dig that lineup a lot. I would do this deal in a second with more first-round picks included. It's unrealistic, but I like where your head's at. I'm going to give you a B because you at least acknowledged that it's an unrealistic thing here. So I've got 8 WTF trades. 8 that are like, what the heck? Let's look at that. Some of those coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Some of these, I think some of y'all were trolling me just a little bit here. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America, and it's the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS because it's just you versus the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros, sharks, people with blocks and monitors, machine learning algorithms, and all that stuff, it's just you versus the numbers. You pick more or less on the stat projection for 2 to 6 players, and then you watch the winnings roll in. It's really that simple. With the big game around the corner here, right, you can take a combo projection too. Travis Kelce and CJ McCollum at a 10.5 combo of 3-pointers made and receptions. So testing your skills on Prize Picks this basketball season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Prize Picks is really simple to play, and you can make your picks in just under 60 seconds. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that is free $100 in first-time deposit match up to $100 when you go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA. Prize Picks, it's daily fantasy sports made easy. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here, the #1 Pelicans podcast, breaking down everything you want. And today we are breaking down your trades. Let's get into some interesting ones here of, okay, like what are we looking at here? Some of these get weird. There's one here that I find interesting and not in a good way. This one comes from Brett, Go Ingram. I'm sorry if I'm going to be mean here. The Pelicans get Tyus Jones, Dorian from the Wizards, Dorian Finney-Smith from the Nets, Nick Claxton from the Nets. This one didn't have like a good categorization. The Brooklyn Nets get Daniel Gafford and Landry Shamet, and then the Washington Wizards get CJ McCollum. So basically the Pelicans are sending out CJ McCollum, getting Tyus Jones, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Nick Claxton. I just think that makes you worse. I get the idea here. You get another center. You get insurance, as Brett says, for Zion in Dorian Finney-Smith, and then you upgrade the kind of backup position with Tyus Jones. But now you're paying Nick Claxton. This puts the Pelicans in the luxury tax, by the way, by about $3 million. You get Nick Claxton, Jonas Valanciunas, and Larry Nance Jr. as your center, right? Dorian Finney-Smith is a little bit redundant there too. And then Tyus Jones isn't as good as CJ McCollum. Like, sorry, man, this one's an F. Kind of like, I'm not going to go into the luxury tax to get this team, in my opinion, significantly worse. So let's get weird, because Ryan here got weird. RT Northrop. The Pelicans send out Brandon Ingram and Dyson Daniels and bring back Kyrie Irving from the Dallas Mavericks. It's an interesting idea. You get a true lead guard that can really attack the basket and put pressure on the defense, that can shoot threes. I kind of don't hate it from that idea. I'll give you a B there. I think that's still a lot. I think the Dallas Mavericks would probably run with this deal, which tells you something. I don't like the rest of this because I'm not a big Kyrie guy. Just too much weirdness going on around there. And when you have a guy like Zion Williamson, do you really want that around the team at all? And so because of that, I say no. There's another one. This one comes from Ashay, and it says Kyrie Irving for CJ McCollum. I don't think Dallas would do that at all. I don't, again, hate that idea for New Orleans in terms of the player being added. I think CJ is a guy that I want to keep on this team because he's played exceptionally well. So I don't really love the idea of sending him out. But again, you trade the consummate professional in CJ McCollum for Kyrie Irving, who is the opposite of that. It's an F. It's an F. Anything with Kyrie Irving is going to be an F. Andrew comes in here. Andrew with an extra W, 7171. He says, there's the screenshot here of the trade, and then there's the comment that he puts, and it goes, and we give up 5 first-round picks. Just think about that for a second before I even say the deal. Pelicans send out CJ McCollum, Dyson Daniels, Trey Murphy III, and 5 first-round picks. Who do you think they're getting back? Who do you think they're getting back? LeBron James. There's some rumors out there about LeBron James now that I saw on Twitter. Rumors. The Lakers are shopping him. I think you would probably do more than this, though. If you're sending out LeBron James, Trey Murphy, Dyson Daniels, and CJ in 5 first-round picks, isn't actually the worst return. I'll be honest. I'll give you an A on this one, all around. That's probably what it would take to get a deal done for LeBron James. If he's actually being shopped, I'll give you an A all around here. LeBron James in New Orleans with Zion and Brandon Ingram would be a lot of fun to me. And LeBron is still playing at an insanely high level. That would be cool. You get an A. You absolutely get an A on probably the craziest thing here. Brett from GoGo Ingram yet again. This one's another F. This one is just a huge F, and I'm sorry, man. The Pelicans send out Brandon Ingram to the Lakers, and they bring back D'Angelo Russell and Rui Hachimura. It's just an F all around. Russell's not good. He's not bad. He's not good. He can be very hit or miss here. So, no, not at all. One that I thought was kind of interesting was from Dylan Dunn, 0912. Zion Williamson going to the Brooklyn Nets, Bridges and Claxton coming back. If you're intent on moving Zion, and you can get Bridges coming back and Nick Claxton, I'd do that deal in a moment. I would take that one. Now, that's only if you're intent on shipping out Zion, which I am not. I don't hate that deal. I don't know how picks would need to kind of get used in all of this, but you definitely kind of need something like that. I don't know which side's sending picks, though. That's what's kind of weird about that trade. But that's an A for the Pelicans if that's what they're looking to do here. This one comes from @the_Pelipod. Hear me out. Najee and Dyson Daniels for a future pick. Force Willie to play offense. Depends on the pick. I kind of get the idea, right? If he just refuses to play some of these offensive guys and run offensive lineups, take those tools away from him, you then need to sign 3 players. That makes things difficult, but it's kind of funny, and I get where your head's at with it here. Final one here goes into the come on, y'all. Although I actually don't hate this one. This one does make a little bit more sense to me. You need to include 1 or 2 other things here, but I do think you're actually on the right track. This one comes from BX Ingram. 1 Ingram, instead of an A, it's a 4, and then BX. The Pistons get Zion Williamson. The Pelicans get Jalen Duren, Cade Cunningham. That on itself you can deal with. Lauri Markkanen as well. The Jazz get Jonas Valanciunas, Dyson Daniels. 2 first-round picks from the Pelicans, a second-round pick from the Pistons, and a 2030 second-round pick from the Pels. You'd probably need to put 2 to 3 more picks going to the Jazz in this. But shipping out Zion Williamson, that's the type of return that can get you a guy like Jalen Duren. and Cade Cunningham. It's realistic. That's a solid B+ trade right there. Took me a minute to kind of go through everything, but it was a lot of fun to look at some of these. So is there a trade out there that you really liked? Let me know in the comments down below on YouTube. Think any of these are realistic? Do you think I'm off on the grades? Let me know what you think here in the comments down below. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all so much for sending in the trades and everything. That was a fun show. Maybe we'll do one of these next week. We got more time as we lead up to the trade deadline. Going to be a lot of trade talk over the next week or so. We'll, of course, have a breaking show if something happens. So as always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. This has been the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. See y'all next time.